How do you go from 0 to the worst possible crime you can commit in Texas?
Had a pregnant woman, 18 years old, who was about to give birth. Her boyfriend, that is 3 lives, brutally murdered.
If I were unrealistic, that I would not have thought that there was less than 1% chance of winning. For me, from my side. It would have to be me getting up there and saying, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, don't believe your lying eyes. I can't do that.
There is no DNA, no eyewitnesses, no forensic proof.
The Instagrams were probably the worst. Couple that with the videos. When you put all those pieces together, that was pretty damning.
You took their unborn son. He didn't even have a chance to live. It's not gonna bring my son back.
This capital murder conviction didn't come from DNA or eyewitnesses. It all came down to surveillance video and a digital trail that prosecutors say told the whole story. I sat down with Christopher Preciado's former defense attorney.
Kill my body cam on. Yeah.
Okay. How do you say your last name? Preciado? Preciado?
In your view, what convinced the jury that he was guilty?
When you hear the case itself, it is very difficult to put aside any type of feeling that you may have when there's a young woman who's about to give birth the next day. That is just hard to overcome. There's no blood evidence pointing to Christopher. They have some ballistics, but no one can tell you who had their finger on the trigger. Is he guilty of capital murder? Absolutely not. There was a lot of bantering between some of the jurors because they were very polarized on the idea that an infant was killed during this process.
December 21st of 2023, that is exactly what Christopher Preciado did to them and their unborn baby. He executed them.
And I saw that there was plenty of blood in the back, enough blood in the front, and that there was a car seat on top of the female in the very front. I saw a female in the front passenger side and then the male on the back side laying down with his lower half exposed.
What is the most overwhelming evidence that was presented in court against Chris?
The Instagrams were probably the worst because they put locations and where he went. And then when you couple that with the videos, even though they don't show him at the scene or whatever, when you put all those pieces together, that was pretty damning. There was 205,000 clips of videos. That was just clips from the home security. Then you have all the stuff that they gave us from the Burla, then all the stuff that they gave us from the Instagram, and then the other Instagram.
Explain the Instagram message.
He was messaging between himself and what I thought was Matthew. But apparently Savannah was the one that was negotiating the deals with him because Matthew was driving and I guess Savannah was using her phone to be negotiating. They have unique identifiers and they put you in the GPS location on the location portion of the Instagram. And then also we find out that even though you want to maybe delete some of the messages, it's not automatic. So there's all these things that were in there that it's like, okay, well, these are y'all's words. These are their words. This is your words. You know, how are you going to say that that's not you? It's traced back to your house, traced back to you.
And then once he got there and he met with them, what happened next?
I don't know what happened in the vehicle. I can tell you what my guy says if you look at the video.
She's sitting here, she's agitated on the phone. Mm-hmm. He's there agitated, yelling at me with a gun in my face.
You know, that Matthew was agitated. He kept saying he was agitated. He must have used that like maybe 8 or 9 times. He said that he was agitated. But do I know what went on in there? I don't think anybody's ever going to know truly what happened in that vehicle.
He's doing that like this. I push it, and he has a finger on the brake, so I just push it like that, and then just hear the loud ringing. Oh, where is she?
They got into an argument of some sorts, right? And that's when he felt the need to
push the gun away and turn the gun towards his head and shoot him that way, like
And I'm trying to
saying
get it
Matthew shot himself.
right. So doing that is going to be hard to get a contact shot.
How did he explain Savannah's death?
I believe he said that Matthew shot Savannah because they were struggling for the gun.
He drove the car from the house to the apartment.
Correct, and there was the footage to document that. Home monitoring devices are wonderful unless you're committing crime.
So you think it was the videos that did him in?
I think the videos were detrimental in terms of timeline. Essentially, their home monitoring system, the Ring cameras that they had at the house, that's what did them in. And, everybody thinks it's fun and games until it's not fun and games. Here you have these people that are accused of crime, and what places them there is the system that they bought for their home to protect themselves. The Berla, that BERLA, that device that's in everybody's vehicle, which I was like, every single person here is being monitored for everything you do, how many times you step on the brake, how fast you're going, did you put your seatbelt on in time, what radio station you're listening to, are you listening to a podcast? I mean, all of that information is recorded on a daily basis anytime we sit in our vehicle. They had all of their Instagram information that gives location of where everybody was at, from the perpetrator to the victims. So all of these things were, although there's not any eyewitness and there's not an actual DNA, which was surprising to me, when you put all those pieces together, I think Miss Albin and Mr. Lewis did a really good job of putting all the puzzle pieces together.
You have no doubt that he did it.
I can't really comment as to whether or not I have doubt as to whether or not he did everything by himself.
This is your final chance to say something about your side.
Hey guys, we're going this way.
I can tell you that the system works, and in this case, a jury of 12 people that listened to all the evidence from both sides
Nothing to say to the family.
made a decision that he is guilty.
We, the jury, find the defendant Christopher Ray Preciado guilty of the offense of capital murder as charged in count 3.
Does that tell you that there was overwhelming evidence, or does that tell you that they didn't fully consider reasonable doubt?
They had been there 9 days. They had a lot of evidence, and they were packed days.
You must have known that this might come.
I was fairly certain that this was going to be a guilty. It's very difficult in Texas to essentially get away with killing a woman who's pregnant.
You mentioned that they really combed through his history, and he seemed like a good kid.
You would have thought that he just some stoner boy living in his parents' house and going to community college and just hanging out with his dog.
But prosecutors painted him as a predator who was there. It was just a matter of time. He was a wolf in a sheep's clothing.
I believe that's exactly what Melissa Albin did say. If I had gone down the street and been picking out somebody that I would say, wow, this guy looks like he would commit a double homicide, he would not have been my first candidate.
And such a brutal one at that. There was hiding the bodies after, and not only that, but pawning, taking the jewelry off dead bodies and pawning them off not long after. Doesn't that show that there was intent, that this was more calculated than just a self-defense, spur of the moment, I'm trying to save my life?
I don't have those details for you, whether or not it was calculated or whether there was some type of a master plan.
The evidence is super clear that he did intend to commit this robbery. He needed those car parts. He needed the money. So he killed.
I don't think that anybody ever truly going to know what happened in that car. They're going to know that 2 people were murdered and that a baby died as a result of that. They're going to know that. But as far as what type of transaction was going on, what type of arrangement, this other boy that hired a lawyer that went and did the actual pawning of these things, we're not going to ever know all those things because he pled the fifth, just like we didn't really get an inside picture, so to speak, of Savannah's best friend when I started asking her, okay, well, tell me about this. Did you partake in these drug parties? And she started pleading the fifth. So I couldn't get all that information out.
Yeah, but a good person who might have made a mistake in self-defense would not be okay with taking jewelry off of a dead body and then pretending like life is normal and moving on and trying to make money off of it. Just, it doesn't add up.
This is the reason that we have juries to listen to all this, and as a lawyer, all I can do is advise and counsel.
We all know that is an act. You know that because of everything that we proved to you he did and he said in between the days that he murdered all three of them.
Why didn't the state go for the death penalty?
You usually are looking for someone that has a ton of criminal history that just isn't learning from the regular sentences that they've been given or opportunities of probation. And I wanted school records. I wanted, do you have any criminal history, any traffic tickets, anything? And they didn't find anything. There was no suspensions in school, no expulsions, no detentions, nothing. I imagine the district attorney also did the same investigation to see if there was anything that merits, like, how do you go from zero to the worst possible crime you can commit in Texas? And I think sometimes to get to the death penalty, you have to show that, you are morally reprehensible and there's no way of rehabilitating you.
All we know is that he didn't, and his parents helped him.
What was the most shocking moment of that trial as you were in there standing in that courtroom?
I didn't expect to be called a clown lawyer. I'm not going to say necessarily shocking, but I wouldn't expect to be called a clown lawyer. That was interesting to me from a personal level because, again, I did not commit this crime. I did not participate in it at all. All I was doing was making sure that Christopher gets a fair trial.
And that came from one of the victim's family members.
Correct.
Your mom and your dad. Two special places for y'all.
What did you do when he said that?
I turned to my client and told him that we're not allowed to respond to anything in case they started attacking him personally.
And that was it?
That's it. Because I had told him ahead of time, we're not allowed to respond. But I felt that if they were saying something about me, it might get worse as it progressed. And I did not want him to say anything because we have to maintain decorum.
Even though I know he's not physically here anymore, I know he's still here with me. And he's the only reason that I made it through this trial without putting my hands on you.
Did you feel like things got personal to you at that moment?
Sometimes the families are not very sympathetic on the side of the defense lawyer. I would agree with that.
There was a lot of emotion in that courtroom. Yelling, crying.
No, you're going outside and stay. Come on out, let's go.
People
outside.
Being kicked out through the 8-day trial.
I know there was a lot of controversy in terms of social media, that why were the parents there after their co-defendants? The statute, although not specific in Texas, there is some Supreme Court cases that say that your family is allowed to be there for moral support for your case.
The part you're talking about specifically is when Christopher's father, Ramon, showed up to court.
Right, and his mother was there as well.
And your son is locked up.
My whole family, they're there.
This is a family crime. His father is also getting ready to go to trial. Wouldn't you say it's warranted that as they see the people, the guy who murdered their loved ones, and his father who allegedly helped him hide the bodies?
And I understand the point. However, when you're in a court of law, there are a lot of emotions. I would have the same emotions. I lost my sister last year, and it's a very sore subject for me. Today I had to deal with somebody whose wife was dying of cancer, and I felt very terrible as well because it's something that's very raw to me. And I understand that they lost their family members, but you still have to maintain decorum in the court to get the process done.
And Matthew had a heart of gold, and I miss him very much every day. But I know I'll see him someday. Thank you.
Tensions were high. Emotions were running high. It was a little intrusive when I was having to have the deputies not let me go places because they didn't feel it was safe for me in the courthouse. That was a little stressful. I know that in this particular case, that the stresses of the security in the courtroom were tantamount. I know that there was a lot of concern. I mean, I have been in many trials. I did a trial with this convicted now felon who shot at police officers. He had 4 different counties full of police officers, but they were there as supportive. In this particular case, I have never been in a trial where they needed 34 Bexar County deputies to maintain order in the court for the verdict. That is a lot of manpower. And I think it was a job that required a lot more security, and I think maybe on the last day, they didn't want anything to happen to anyone.
You have no remorse for any of us. And her mother right here. And her father. They cannot talk, but I will. I will talk for my cousin and her boyfriend and their unborn sons.
I saw your reaction in that video. I was watching the victim impact statements, and I saw both Savannah's family speaking and Matthew's family, and in some parts addressing you as well. You just had no reaction on your face, and I wondered, what were you thinking in that moment listening to them?
You know, I just have to accept their feelings. I can't change your feelings. And again, it is very traumatic for a family to lose a loved one, especially someone so young. You know, Savannah's 18, about to have someone's grandchild, great-grandchild. You know, Matthew's only 20. I think he was 20, 21.
Yeah.
He's also super young.
I think a lot of people related to it because you could see yourself in it. You have a pregnant mom and a life that didn't even get a chance to see life.
And all that, I agree with you. It's tragic. Everybody in that room was affected, and I still stick by my statement of parenting. You know, everyone made mistakes as a parent. I think that Chris relied on his parents' counsel to go forward with whatever action he committed to make it even worse. And I think that, you know, had Savannah and Matthew stayed home and made a decision today, is probably not the day we're going to go to the hospital tomorrow. You know, maybe we would be talking about their baby being born and them expanding their family.
There's a picture of Matthew holding up, Matthew holding a long arm, Matthew holding an extended clip. When I was a young prosecutor, I put that kind of guy in jail. 2 drug deals on video, right in front of God and everyone. He's just walking around like, hey, more money, I've got to pay taxes on this money. IRS don't even know that I'm making cash.
This is something you touched on in your closing arguments. And a lot of people were angry about that specific thing because it made it seem like victim blaming.
I think somebody said I was victim shaming.
But she's going to have a baby the next day. They're supposed to be going in a matter of hours. If she makes a decision to go to a drug deal, does she not watch TV?
Because you said something along the lines of, what kind of mother who's about to give birth goes to a drug deal right before she goes to the hospital?
And I stick with my position. If you have a matter of hours, you as a mother, anybody as a mom, you have an obligation to take care of your baby.
She joins the family business.
No matter what.
I didn't even know until Detective Goodwin, who was the lead detective on Savannah's brother's death, and he said that Ethan was killed in a drug deal gone bad. So she had a preview of what could happen, and she still made the choice to go with Matthew that night and both fell drugs.
Did you think that was the right move?
I only have a limited amount of stuff to work with, and I do what I can do based upon the totality of my circumstances and evidence that I have on my side.
So you still stand by defending even the most vile criminals?
People always ask that question. How do you sit there and how do you defend child molesters? I'm not defending their actions. It's very important that you understand that, I mean, I was a prosecutor and I advocated for victims. Before I went to law school, I was a victims advocate for domestic violence victims. I was a family violence judge. So I understand working with victims. The system doesn't work if there's not someone to protect the rights of an accused. And you see it every day that there's somebody that gets exonerated because they found some DNA that later on is like, oh my God, it's not that guy. He spent 25 years in jail. 30 years. The Michael Morton Act is from that. If we don't have a system that works that way, then innocent people can be mistreated. I just want to make sure that you have the right person, and if you're going to convict them and give them this type of time, that you haven't made any mistakes. And I think that's really important. I think it protects all of us. Can you imagine you're driving home one day and somebody says that you went and killed someone and you're like, I literally just went home, and there's no proof. You would want somebody to go in and fight like heck for you.
In a case like this, so high profile, how much does public opinion matter?
I don't know, because the jurors are instructed not to be looking at any type of external source to help make their decision. I don't know if, as a human being, I would be very curious to want to do that, or if I truly stuck to my oath. I would think, based upon the feedback that I received from the jury, when the prosecution and I talked to the jurors, they were very positive about their commentaries toward me, and they understood that I had very limited stuff to work with.
And there was no discussion of moving the trial outside of Bexar County?
There's a discussion about that. There's always that discussion. And I've done that in one case, and it was very adverse to us to do that. So I explained the pros and cons about getting a change of venue, because we don't get to choose where we go. It'd be awesome if I could say, hey, can we go to South Padre Island and have a trial down there? How great would that be? It's not like that. The judge gets to choose where the venue is going to be, and then you don't know what jurors you're going to get. And even if you go to a surrounding county, they still have access to the same stuff. Social media is everywhere. It's easy to Google something. And Ken's 5, that reported on this case, goes all the way to those small surrounding counties. So I'm not really sure I would get away from the publicity that surrounded this case.
Do you have a message for the families?
Well, I'm very sorry for their loss. It's terrible. It's tragic. You never want to lose your children. You never want to lose your grandchildren. It's terrible. To lose a sibling is difficult. To lose a parent is difficult. But these kids were very young, and they had a lot of life left in them, and I feel very bad for them.
I know now the trial is over. Do you still fear at all for your safety at any point now that everything is behind us?
I hope not. I hope that they understand. I understand from the district attorney's office that they were satisfied with the verdict, knowing that Chris is going to be spending the rest of his life in prison and never getting out. And I hope that they understand that this was not a personal vendetta or decision. I had to do what I had to work with. I can only use the tools that I'm given, and unfortunately, sometimes it requires to spin a different narrative than what the district attorney is telling them.
What do you think should happen to Chris's father now?
I don't have any opinion on that. Or his mom.
You said you were not surprised that there was an overwhelming amount of evidence, but yet you guys filed an appeal.
Yeah, that's mandatory, really.
And you'll go back to defending him in that appeal?
I have withdrawn. I filed a notice of appeal, and then I filed a motion for new trial, which gives the court reporter extra time. I don't believe there's going to be a new trial granted. I think the appeal is going to go straight to the fourth court.
Personally, you're officially done with this case.
I am officially discharged from my obligations in this case. I feel at peace that I did my part of preserving what I believe is the U.S. Constitution and the Texas Constitution. Yes, I do.
We all worked really hard to make sure that the case was presented as clearly and effectively as it could have been. And I think the jury coming back as quickly as they did means that we did that.
That car right there.
This is your final chance to say something about your side.
Hey guys, we're going this way.